I settled into the familiar embrace of my high-backed leather chair, its cracked surface molded to the shape of 8 years of late nights and relentless problem-solving. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, Silver Peak City's steel and glass skyline sprawled beneath a pale dawn, the mountains beyond still shrouded in pre-sunrise haze. My heart beat with a familiar certainty, until the door clicked open. "Your custom system is obsolete," said the newcomer. He stood framed in the doorway, his tailored navy blazer a stark contrast to my worn hoodie and rumpled shirt. "My name is Adrian Stone," I replied, voice calm. "I'm 48, and for the past 8 years, I've built something that never failed." "Adrian," he began without introduction, tapping a sleek tablet. "I'm Marcus Reed, Chief Technology Officer at Sterling & Hale. We're moving to Summit Link Cloud, the industry standard for firms like Zenith Aeronautics, Aerotech Dynamics, and every major government contractor out west." He didn't bother to sit. "Your creation will be phased out by quarter's end." Time seemed to stop as I absorbed the words. Sterling & Hale, firm I'd poured my soul into, had decided to replace every line of my code with someone else's shiny new script. I closed my laptop gently and lifted my gaze to his. "Summit Link Cloud," I echoed, tasting the irony. Outside, city spires glinted in the morning light. The same attorneys who praised my system for surviving every crisis were signing on to a solution they barely understood. "They handle the biggest firms in Silver Peak, sure," he said, browsing his tablet. "Fortune 5s, government agencies, you name it." He offered a curt nod, as if that satisfied both of us. Then, without meeting my eyes, he stepped back. "Your services won't be required after Friday." I nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Understood." He paused in the hallway, turned, and added almost as an afterthought, "Nothing personal. Just business evolution." Then the corridor swallowed him. I remained seated, letting the silence settle in layers around me. In this business, nothing lasts forever. Projects conclude. Vendors change. Yet I knew something he didn't: how these cloud platforms actually behaved when they broke. I'd fielded midnight emergency calls, restored corrupted databases at dawn, wrestled invisible gremlins buried in third-party code. I closed my eyes and let my mind drift to the Harrison antitrust litigation, when the court demanded real-time billing for 200,000 attorney hours across 50 team members. My system compiled and delivered the reports without a single error, less than 10 minutes after the request. And that federal aerospace inquiry last spring, minute-by-minute billing data for a 3-year span, generated in under 10 minutes. Not once had it faltered. But tomorrow, when I cleared out my desk, that legacy of reliability would walk out the door with me. Slowly, I pushed myself upright and surveyed the room I'd occupied since the firm's original office on Oak Elm Drive. My desk bore the faint imprint of countless coffee mugs, my monitor still illuminated with half-written queries. I rose and crossed to the drawer where I kept the business cards I'd printed 2 years ago but never used. Adrian Stone, independent technology consultant. Clean font, matte finish, unused potential waiting in a stack of 50. I tucked them into my jacket pocket. If fate insisted on ejecting me from the nest, I would soar on my own terms. My thoughts drifted back 8 years to the moment I joined Sterling & Hale after my own startup collapsed in the dot-com crash. My partner and I had built inventory tracking software for small manufacturers, only to watch our funding evaporate overnight. When I walked into Sterling & Hale's classic brick lobby, 3 attorneys had lost a day of billable work because their legacy system corrupted files. The managing partner, Eloise Sterling herself, cornered me in the hallway and said, "Build me something better, something that never fails under pressure." I spent 6 months embedded in the firm's trenches, shadowing lawyers as they raced to file documents at midnight, piecing together the truth of their workflows. Not how they described their routines, but how they functioned when deadlines loomed. From those observations, I crafted my system: redundant local backups, seamless offline modes, intuitive interfaces that guided exhausted users. Every feature reflected a granular understanding of real-world stress. In the first major test, the Kensington merger discovery phase, my software tracked 18 months of document reviews, 250,000 individual entries, and delivered bulletproof audit trails that silenced every billing dispute. Word of our success spread. Competitors tried to poach me. Software firms dangled licensing deals. Eloise, recognizing the risk of losing me, doubled my salary and granted me equity. "You're part of this family," she'd said, her eyes warm. Last year she retired, handing the torch to her son, Wyatt Hale. But real authority had shifted to the new CTO, Ethan Hart, a Harvard business graduate who'd never stepped into a law office until 9 months ago. At first, his changes were subtle: restricted access to financial dashboards, monthly check-ins replacing ad hoc meetings, new policies requiring all tech decisions to route through his department. When I pitched enhancements to my own system, his response was always the same: "We're evaluating our stack holistically." A team of McKinsey consultants arrived, interviewing staff and auditing code, though I never saw their report. Still, I sensed the writing on the wall. On Friday afternoon, I methodically packed my monitors, cables, and reference binders into my travel bag. 8 years of institutional knowledge sat in dusty code comments and configuration files that would now be orphaned. As I slipped out of my unlocked office, I felt the quiet pull of liberation. 3 weeks later, I sat at a small cafe near my apartment, reviewing resumes and plotting my next steps, when my phone buzzed. "Adrian, it's Maya Santos from Sterling and Hale," said the voice of the senior paralegal who'd always championed the support staff. "Adrian, the Summit Link migration failed. They've lost all billing records for the Harrison case. 3 months of work. The trial starts Monday." I took a sip of my latte, savoring its bitterness. "I can help," I said evenly. Within 30 minutes, I was back at Sterling and Hale, stepping into Conference Room B, where someone had preserved my old system environment. The room hummed with tension. Attorneys huddled over laptops, lines of code scrolled on screens, phones cradled shoulder to ear. I logged into my legacy server and ran the report generator. Minutes later, I held printed copies detailing 18 months of legal work, over 900 attorney hours, 2,342 paralegal hours, $156,000 in documented expenses, formatted precisely for court submission. Maya's eyes filled with relief. I explained the difference. Their cloud solution caches locally after processing in a remote data center. So when the link broke, everything downstream froze. My system writes locally first, then backs up in real time. At that moment, Ethan Hart appeared in the doorway, weary and defeated. His polished suit now looked too crisp for the chaos behind him. He stared at the reports in Maya's hands, then at me as if seeing a ghost. He'd fired me to save money, and now he depended on my expertise to keep the firm out of trouble. I offered him a small, gracious smile, then turned back to Maya. My business card sat waiting in my pocket, ready for the next chapter. I stepped out of the small conference room into Sterling and Hale's hushed hallway, the weight of Maya Santos's words still settling in my chest. "You heard you were helping with the Harrison situation," she said, voice low. "Temporary consulting engagement," I replied evenly. "Business continuity support?" she asked, relief flickering in her eyes. "Exactly." She gave a curt nod. "That's good. We appreciate you stepping in during this transition period." Transition period. as if this collapse of our entire billing infrastructure were some graceful phase of growth rather than a full-scale failure. I let the compliment pass and asked what felt like the inevitable question. How long until SummitLink Cloud has everything back online? Maya hesitated. They're confident full functionality will return in 48 hours. Typical migration turbulence. Every firm goes through it when upgrading to enterprise-grade solutions. I smiled politely. In my 8 years building Sterling and Hale's custom system, 48 hours from a cloud vendor almost always meant weeks. But I kept my expression neutral. In the meantime, I prompted. Perhaps you could assist with a few other data recovery tasks, she said. Monthly billing reports for all active matters, client invoicing for the past quarter, and, she paused, partnership accounting for the year-end audit. My heart sank at that last phrase. Partnership accounting, the formulaic engine that decided how 6 senior partners split profits, based on weighted algorithms tracking billable hours, client origins, expense allocations, and seniority multipliers. If SummitLink Cloud had mangled that, they weren't just facing annoyed associates. They were courting outright rebellion. I can have preliminary reports ready by tomorrow morning, I said. Excellent, Maya replied. And Adrian, thank you for your professionalism. This has been difficult for everyone. After she left, I retreated to my makeshift workspace, a borrowed laptop, a stack of USB drives, and my old system's source code archived on external disks. I opened my editor and began meticulously reconstructing the financial reports SummitLink Cloud had corrupted. What I found over the next 4 hours was worse than missing data: systematic incompetence. They'd migrated only the simplest tables, basic client lists, case files, flat billing entries, then declared victory. But they'd completely failed to grasp the relational dependencies behind our custom fields. Partner profit distributions relied on bespoke algorithms I'd refined through 8 years of real-world legal crises. SummitLink Cloud's automated migration had stripped out any field it deemed non-standard, obliterating client satisfaction scores, complexity ratings, efficiency indexes, every metric that informed how we rewarded equity partners. Those histories were gone. At 8 p.m., I called Maya. How bad is it, really? I asked. She sighed. They've pushed back their timeline, now estimating 5 to 7 business days for full restoration. Trevor's in back-to-back meetings with Wyatt Sterling and the founding partners. They're talking about forensic data recovery specialists. I rubbed my forehead. And the Harrison deadline? Maya's voice brightened. Your report saved us. Judge Patterson accepted it without question. I allowed myself a small smile. Let's keep it that way. But Adrian, she hesitated. Trevor's telling everyone that SummitLink Cloud provided the data, not you. I felt a flicker of amusement. Ethan Hart taking credit for my work? I let the irony hang. Understood. I paused, then asked. Before they migrated, did anyone from SummitLink Cloud actually test their tools with our data? Did they send a team here to learn our workflows? Maya sounded sheepish. Not that I know of. They said their migration tools were proven with thousands of firms, all remote. I nodded to the empty room. It was like ordering a tailored suit from a catalog. She chuckled softly. Exactly. One more thing, I said. How much is Sterling and Hale paying SummitLink Cloud each year? She hesitated, then admitted, $800,000, plus implementation costs. My pulse quickened. I'd earned $120,000 in salary, plus benefits and equity, for maintaining that system flawlessly. Now they were paying 6 times my compensation for a solution that couldn't handle the basics. Maya, I said quietly, could my old system handle everything SummitLink Cloud is supposed to do? Her answer was immediate. It already did, for 8 years. I closed my eyes and let the realization wash over me. Ethan Hart hadn't simply bought software. He'd bought influence. SummitLink Cloud was owned by Strategian Consulting, where Ethan had spent nearly a decade. He'd sold Wyatt and the partners a vanity project to prove his pedigree rather than a robust tool to serve the firm. He needed a flashy slide deck, not reliable code. By midnight, I drafted a concise project plan. Restore the legacy system as primary, migrate any new data back into it over the next week, and implement safeguards, automated tests, nightly backups, incremental field validation scripts to prevent a repeat disaster. My consulting rate was $300 an hour. 40 hours of work would bring Sterling and Hale's entire infrastructure back from the brink. At 7 a.m. the next day, I arrived in the lobby clutching 3 printed partnership accounting reports and my proposal. I paused to calm my nerves. This was more than a technical fix. It was proof that genuine understanding of a firm's workflows far outvalues any off-the-shelf solution. Maya met me by the elevator. "They've pushed the timeline again," she said. 2 weeks for full data recovery. She glanced at me. "The partners are furious." "Then let's give them relief," I said. The main conference room held 8 partners around a gleaming mahogany table. At the far end stood Ethan Hart, looking as though he'd aged years overnight. I set my laptop on the table, opened my brief, and distributed the printed reports. Wyatt Sterling rose and shook my hand. "Adrian, thank you for coming. We know you've been helping us through these difficulties." I nodded. "I'm here to get you back on track." Ethan cleared his throat. "Adrian's been instrumental during our migration. Summit Link Cloud's forensics team has found the process more complex than anticipated, but we expect full functionality soon." "How soon?" Patricia Santos asked, arms crossed. Ethan swallowed. 2 weeks for complete restoration, though basic functions should return immediately." Patricia leaned forward. "Immediate basics are insufficient if we can't distribute profits this quarter." She eyed me. "What exactly has Adrian provided?" I arranged the partnership accounting packets in front of her. "These are your complete profit distribution statements for the quarter, calculated with the same proprietary algorithms in place for 8 years, based on every billable hour, expense entry, and client origination credit." She flipped through the pages, her eyes widening. "But your system was obsolete," she said, incredulous. Wyatt looked at Ethan. "The decision to migrate was made for long-term scalability and integration. Yet we've lost 6 weeks of productivity, jeopardized the Harrison case, and cannot even generate partner distributions. Adrian, what would it cost to restore your original platform as primary?" I cleared my throat. 40 hours of restoration work at $300 per hour. After that, I recommend a maintenance contract, including nightly integrity checks, automated field validations, and quarterly code reviews. Silence fell. Then, one by one, hands rose around the table. 8 votes in favor of terminating the Summit Link Cloud contract and reinstating my system. Wyatt cleared his throat and read the resolution. "Effective immediately, Adrian Stone is authorized to restore Sterling and Hale's billing and case management platform. All migration activities with Summit Link Cloud are suspended pending legal review." Patricia turned to Ethan. "We'll also review every technology decision from the past year, including vendor selection and due diligence procedures." Ethan managed a nod. "I believe this is a mistake. Summit Link Cloud is a proven enterprise solution." Wyatt's voice was firm. "It's proven to be a catastrophic disruption. Adrian's platform works. Let's restore functionality and protect our firm." I connected my laptop to the server rack. Lines of familiar, meticulously documented code began streaming back into the firm's infrastructure. Database connections reestablished, custom workflows reactivated, integrations with accounting systems, document repositories, and client portals restored in real time. "How long until we're fully operational?" Wyatt asked. 4 hours for restoration, 2 more for testing and verification," I replied. Then you'll be better than fully operational. I've spent the last 3 weeks preparing enhancements." Maya let out a relieved breath. I allowed myself a small smile, tempered with the knowledge that this victory came at the cost of months of trust squandered and relationships strained. But as I watched the partners gather around the newly revived system, I felt the quiet vindication of knowing that true craftsmanship, attuned to real users and real workflows, could never be replaced by empty promises and surface-level shows of innovation. I leaned back in my chair, the late afternoon light slanting through the conference room's high windows and painting long shadows across the polished oak floor. The restored system hummed quietly at the front of the room. Faster, sleeker, more intuitive than the platform I'd first built 8 years ago. I allowed myself a brief, satisfied smile. Across the table, Ethan Hart rose abruptly to his feet. "I need to make some calls regarding contract termination procedures," he muttered, hastily gathering his tablet and folder. With that, he strode from the room, the click of his shoes echoing behind him. As the door swung shut, Patricia Santos, one of the firm's founding partners, turned to me, her expression a mix of relief and embarrassment. "Adrian," she said softly, "we owe you an apology." Her words caught me off guard. Just months ago, I'd been escorted out of this very building as though I were an obsolete relic. Now, they stood before me, admission of error on their lips. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the gravity of the moment settle in my chest. "I appreciate that," I replied, keeping my tone measured. Change can be hard to evaluate when you're not immersed in the technical details every day. Patricia nodded, her gaze steady. "Letting Ethan eliminate your position was a serious error in judgment. Would you consider returning as a permanent employee?" I set my gaze on the restored dashboard projected at the front of the room. 3 weeks ago, I'd packed my desk in silence. Today, they were offering me a seat at the table once more. "Thank you," I began, choosing my words carefully. "But I think the consulting arrangement works better for everyone. You gain guaranteed system reliability without the overhead of a full-time salary, and I retain the flexibility to help multiple clients." I paused, letting that sink in. In the past week alone, 3 other firms had reached out. Word travels swiftly when a major cloud provider migration collapses. The truth was, I already had my plate full. Parallel data recoveries, emergency patches, and new feature requests from firms across Silver Peak City. The freedom of consulting suited me, and it suited them. "Consulting it is, then," Patricia said with a half-smile, standing and offering her hand. I shook it, acknowledgement passing between us that the dynamic had shifted irrevocably, and for the better. 6 months later, Sterling and Hale settled their breach of contract lawsuit with Summit Link Cloud for $200,000. The legal battle had been a brief but painful reminder that vendor relationships hinge on accountability. Ethan Hart quietly resigned and moved on to a boutique practice in Phoenix, no doubt lured by promises of fresh disruption. Meanwhile, my own consultancy had expanded to serve a dozen law firms across Colorado and Wyoming. Demand for reliable, custom-built systems had never been greater. Apparently, many firms had experienced their own Summit Link moments, struggling with generic platforms ill-equipped for specialized workflows. I remember the day I received Wyatt Sterling's call like it was yesterday. I was seated at my home office desk, surrounded by whiteboards scrawled with architecture diagrams and a half-finished proposal for a corporate merger dashboard. Outside, the jagged silhouette of the Flatiron Range shimmered in spring sunshine beyond my window. My phone buzzed with a familiar ringtone. "Adrian, it's Wyatt," he said, voice bright. "I wanted to update you on the partnership distributions." I leaned forward, notebook at the ready. "Go ahead." "We just closed out the best quarter in the firm's history," Wyatt began. The efficiency improvements you integrated into the restored system have boosted our billable hour tracking by 12%. It's a record. A swell of pride warmed me. 12%. Hundreds of thousands of additional recoverable hours, directly translating into revenue and partner dividends. That's fantastic news, I said, letting my enthusiasm show. I'm glad the enhancements are paying off. There was a pause, then Wyatt continued. There's something else. We're opening a second office in Clearwater. My pulse quickened. Clearwater, a thriving mountain town 2 hours northwest, was poised for growth. Of course, I replied. What are you envisioning? We need an integrated system that links both locations seamlessly. Unified billing, shared document management, real-time timekeeping, everything. His tone had the edge of excitement reserved for a major new venture. Would you be interested in architecting that? I glanced at the whiteboards behind me, already imagining network diagrams and synchronization protocols. Absolutely. What's your timeline? We'd like to start planning next month, he said. And Adrian? This time you'll report directly to me. No intermediaries. I smiled. Clear accountability. Direct communication. The way it should have been all along. After we hung up, I rose from my desk and walked to the window. The snow-capped peaks of the Flatiron Range rose above Silver Peak City's skyline like silent sentinels. My reflection stared back in the glass. Once an employee told his that his system was obsolete, and now an independent consultant on the cusp of expanding across 2 offices. I felt a profound satisfaction. I had built something that worked, something that mattered, something that lasted. A text from Maya Santos pinged on my phone. Maya. New CTO started today. First thing he asked, is Adrian Stone available for a consultation on system architecture? I told him your rate is $500 per hour. He didn't bat an eye. I chuckled. Half a year ago, $300 an hour had seemed steep. Now $500 an hour was the new norm. Expertise that can't be replaced by a catalog solution commands its true value. I opened my laptop and began drafting the integration specifications for Sterling and Hale's Clearwater office. Database schemas, API endpoints, load balancing rules, and a phased rollout plan to avoid any cutover chaos. Between coding and diagramming, I paused to reflect on how far the industry had shifted. In an age of one-size-fits-all cloud platforms, firms were finally recognizing the difference between working and working well. Some problems demand bespoke solutions crafted by people who understand every nuance of their clients' operations, from the hallowed halls of small-town courthouses to the cutthroat world of federal antitrust litigation. At last, the market was catching up to that reality.